Hello once again, everybody. I'm your host, Johnathon Robson, and you're listening to the CBus Paranormal Paracast. On today's episode, I'll be discussing our first investigation of 2022, Landoll's Mohican Castle in Loudonville, Ohio. This investigation would be our first official investigation in quite some time, and I was joined by my fellow investigator, Michael Hale. During this investigation, we'd have full access to two reportedly haunted locations on the property, the Macbeth Cottage, and the historic graveyard, Hyde Cemetery. Landoll's Mohican Castle has several claims of paranormal activity on the property. Everything from disembodied voices, full-bodied apparitions, objects being moved, and even claims of mysterious fires. Ironically, I also have my own ties to this location, as I was married at the castle in 2015. I have also stayed at this location several times over the years. However, this would be the first time I'd actually have a chance to investigate part of it. The castle's been featured on a few television shows over the years, such as Ghost Hunters A&E Edition and Hotel Hell with Gordon Ramsay. Today we're going to take a special look at the history of this location, its claims of paranormal activity, and our observations during our own investigation of the property. As some of you have seen on social media, I've also been doing quite a bit of traveling as of late. I've been investigating some more off-the-wall type of paranormal locations. The team has also started to slowly branch out a bit into the cryptid field, so naturally, I had to go down and make an appearance at the first ever Hocking Hills Bigfoot Festival last month. I tried to blend in with the locals. I bought all sorts of merchandise, met with some researchers, and took a brief stroll through Old Man's Cave before venturing back up north. I know we have a few cryptid followers that have been waiting for me to do an episode on cryptids, and I promise you won't have to wait much longer. Landoll's Mohican Castle is a mere 4 miles away from Mohican State Park. Why am I mentioning this? Mohican State Park also has its fair share of paranormal claims, including several Bigfoot sightings over the years. The forest expands for several miles, and the castle's right in the thick of all of it. In short, there are a lot of interesting topics in this area itself, and we will be discussing Mohican State Park on a future episode. Before we begin, I would like to thank all of you for helping the Paracast break yet another personal best for the amount of downloads on a debut episode for episode 7. This is starting to become a reoccurring trend, and I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to listen to our show. The trilogy of Prospect Place Mansion episodes have done extremely well, and have been well received. I can't thank you guys enough for the support. This show features locations that we've either investigated or at least visited, so our episodes will likely stay on a monthly schedule. This format allows me to have time to conduct proper research and evidence reviews in between episodes. As the show continues to grow, I'm going to be looking at a few new ideas to help it expand, so hopefully I'll have some more news for you guys in the coming weeks. That being said, let's roll our Patreon message and discuss today's location, Landoll's Mohican Castle. For our new listeners, please remember to follow us on social media, visit cbusparanormal.com, and subscribe to the CBus Paranormal Paracast for the latest updates. We also have a Patreon page set up for additional content. We offer ad-free episodes, behind-the-scenes looks into our investigations, exclusive content, And we'll give shoutouts to new subscribers on future episodes of the Paracast. We're looking to expand the Patreon page as we go, and we're looking to make it even more interactive in the near future. A small monthly donation goes a long way in helping us provide new content for the show. For more information, visit patreon.com/cbusparanormalparacast. When you first drive up to Landoll's Mohican Castle, the location itself seems to be taken straight out of a fairy tale. The castle is located in a secluded area near Mohican State Park in Loudonville, Ohio. The castle is nestled deep in the woods, and it's a rather impressive sight when you drive up to it for the first time. There are also several other buildings sprawling across its massive landscape. This includes a fine dining restaurant, a pool house, an entertainment complex, and several lodging suites for its guests. The castle itself is currently being used as a hotel, and it brings in thousands of guests each year from all over the world. One of the first buildings you'll see upon entering the castle's property is the Macbeth Cottage, an 1800 stone cottage that's been remodeled in recent years, and it's currently being used as one of the castle's suites. Ironically, they've also dubbed it as Suite 13. I'm guessing that was done for theatrical effect. If naming it the Macbeth Cottage wasn't enough. It's also hard to miss the historic graveyard right next to the castle's main parking area. The property itself is massive, however it's well maintained, and it immediately gives off a sense of remote class and elegance. The castle came into existence from one person's dream and his love of European castles. During a 2-year tour of Europe, now retired Army veteran Jim Landoll vowed that if he ever made enough money in his life, that he would build a castle of his own in America. Little did he know at the time that he would actually achieve his goal. Jim Landoll would found the Landoll Publishing Company in the early 1970s. By 1996, the publishing company would go on to be considered the second largest printer and publisher of children's books in America. The company would be sold in 1997, and Jim eventually realized it was time to start building his dream castle. According to their website, the castle was originally going to be an elaborate barn that looked like a castle. However, in 1999, Jim's wife, Marta, convinced him into turning the castle into a hotel and share his dream with the world. The castle would be built one room at a time, and there were no floor plans or blueprints for the construction. Landoll's Mohican Castle would officially open to the public in 2002. Sitting on 30 acres, the castle sits at 1,200 feet. Technically, it's on a mountain. The castle has since become one of the most popular getaways in northeastern Ohio. While the castle itself is a modern structure, the ground it sits on has a rather unique history. The land was originally owned by Native Americans, and it was eventually taken over by European settlers under the founding Hyde family. The settlers would go on to erect a church and a graveyard on the property. It has been stated that there were constant conflicts between the settlers and the natives about their property lines. This would in turn cause quite a bit of turmoil and infighting between the groups. I've heard claims of a family being murdered on the grounds by Native Americans. However, I'm not exactly sure how accurate that is. Obviously, the time period for such an event would likely be long before consistent record keeping. So I'm not exactly sure how this event is known, or why this story is getting passed around. I do find it odd, however, that a similar event has been documented around 17 miles away from the property. And we'll get into that on our next episode. But I'm not sure if this is a local legend that's been misrepresented and blurred, or if the locals have spawned it from various rumors over the years. To top it off, there was also conflict between the Hydes and their own people. Many of the settlers worshipped God in their native German language. However, the Hydes felt that they should be worshipping in English. Eventually, after a meeting, the two sides would continue to disagree, and it would prompt several of the settlers to dig up their dead and relocate them to a new settlement down the road. Shortly after that meeting, the church on the grounds would burn to the ground, likely due to foul play. The current owners, the Landolls family, would also deal with their own fire incident in 2008 when their prior restaurant caught fire. While the church no longer stands, its cemetery, Hyde Cemetery, still stands to this day and is well preserved for its age. There have been several claims of paranormal activity that surround the cemetery. The most common reports are visitors reporting the spirit of a little girl in a blue dress. Many visitors believe the apparition to be Samantha Carnegie, who's buried alongside her mother Sarah. They both died within 10 days of one another, and they're believed to have died from typhoid. While paranormal activity has been reported all across the castle's grounds, The Macbeth Cottage in particular is starting to rack up quite a bit of notoriety. It's believed the cottage was built around the 1890s, and it's the oldest structure on the property. The cottage was renovated in 2012, and some individuals have speculated that this might be why the cottage has now become paranormally active. The Macbeth Cottage's paranormal claims include, and are not limited to, reports of children's laughter, footsteps, knocking, claims of items being thrown, drawers opening, full-bodied apparitions, TVs turning themselves on and off, and guests claiming that something pulled their blankets off their bodies while they were asleep. And you wonder why this location was featured on Motel Hell. This would be our first official investigation in quite a few years, and I use the word official as I often would still help with public investigations and occasionally still bust out a recorder at the mansion from time to time. We would be debuting some new gadgets on this case, and I certainly looked at this investigation as a fresh start for our team. Mike and I would arrive at Landoll's Mohican Castle at around 3 p.m. on January 19th, 2022. And the weather was as expected. Miserable. However, we also knew that we had a heated cottage to investigate, so that certainly helped. The temperature high for the day would reach 36 degrees, and the low during the night would go as low as 10 degrees. Yeah, we made sure to wear multiple layers. We started the day off filming some segments for our Patreon listeners, and we received our key to the Macbeth Cottage shortly after. We drove up to the cottage and immediately started admiring its stonework. It wouldn't be long before the sun would go down, and we wanted to get in as much investigation time as possible. Thankfully, once we opened the door, we realized that the location was a lot smaller than we originally thought. A lot smaller. That would give us a few advantages from a camera perspective. So we decided to go with a new 4-camera DVR setup for the cottage itself, and also use handheld camcorders and hide cemetery throughout the night. On this investigation, we would get the chance to test out a few new pieces of equipment: a radio frequency detector, a lightning detector, and an outlet tester. We would run all 3 of these devices throughout the investigation. The first thing we would do is test all of the outlets in the cottage to make sure that the wiring was as it should be. And then we ran a radio frequency detector to make sure there were no hidden devices or anything that may interfere with our equipment. First off, I would personally trust a location such as Landoll's to not have any hidden audio or video devices. So this device wasn't really being used for a gotcha type moment at this location in particular. However, testing these new gadgets now may come in handy down the road. We have encountered a few locations in the past where folks have speculated that the location owners may be tampering or manipulating investigator evidence. Running a radio frequency detector allows you to pick up on any device that emits a radio frequency: stereos, walkie-talkies, cell phones, recording devices, etc. So beware, alleged haunted locations. We will certainly be looking for these oddities on future cases. And I think most of you know that I have no problem calling out a location if we discover anyone manipulating or faking evidence and data. The lightning detector will mainly be used for EMF research. While I personally don't buy into ghosts being able to manipulate EMF or being made of EMF, I also want to study how easily EMF paranormal gadgets can be manipulated by the environment. A lightning detector will alert us if there's a lightning strike within 25 miles of our location. It has been said that REM pods and other meters can sometimes be manipulated by cell phone towers miles away, and lightning can also cause false hits for various paranormal EMF devices. So if anything, we want to test out how storms affect these popular devices as well. We already know how investigators can cause and fall for false EMF hits. Now we want to see what outside factors can also manipulate EMF data and the user's experience. So once our setup was completed, it was finally time to eat. Thankfully, Landoll's has a really cool restaurant on the property called the Copper Mug, so Mike and I left the audio and video running in the cottage, and naturally scouted the castle's dinner menu. The restaurant, much like the rest of the property, is filled with paranormal claims, and the owners have stated in the past that they're leery of the various fire incidents that have plagued them. One incident occurred on May 4th, 2008, and it involved a previous restaurant in the property. The Landolls themselves have also had prior fire incidents at their previous businesses. It's honestly kind of strange looking back at the family's past history with fires in general. The following newspaper clipping provides some details about the prior restaurant fire on the property. The News Journal, May 5th, 2008. Fire guts Landoll's restaurant. Summer festivities will still go on, but some of the spirit at Landoll's Mohican Castle in Loudonville was crushed Sunday when a fire destroyed the legends at the castle restaurant. Only the center chimney and part of the east wall remain. Around 9:30 a.m., Sean Landoll, son of the owners Jim and Marta Landoll, said a cook and a server heard a crackling sound coming from the dining area. They came in to prepare Sunday brunch and found the drapes on fire, Landoll said. They emptied 3 or 4 fire extinguishers on it, but said the whole dining room was soon on fire, up to the ceiling. Landoll said the Loudonville firefighters arrived about 25 minutes later. He said Perrysville and West Holmes fire squads joined them later. We're pretty far out, so it took them a little while to get here, Landoll said. He said firefighters stayed on the scene until about 5 p.m. Both workers inside the restaurant got out safely. While I'm highly skeptical of these past fires being anything paranormal in nature, we can't rule out these odd occurrences without further investigation into the fires and the opinions of the professionals that were on the scenes. The restaurant itself is closed to paranormal investigators. I'll post this article and its photos on social media in the upcoming days. Once we finished dinner, we headed back to the truck to grab our handheld gear and then walked over to Hyde Cemetery. One of the first cool things you'll notice about the cemetery is the age of its headstones. The cemetery itself is well kept and looks amazing for its age. It reminded me a lot of Old Burying Point in Salem, Mass., just on a smaller scale. Unfortunately, by this point, the temperatures had really started to drop and the wind had picked up by a considerable amount. Mike and I knew we'd have to be cautious of how we recorded audio in a cemetery under these conditions. After we fell on our ass a few times from the snow and the ice, we made our way over to Samantha and Sarah Carnegie's grave to start our investigation. As I previously stated, the most common occurrence of activity in the cemetery seems to revolve around a young girl in a blue dress. I'm not sure how or why Samantha was chosen to be the alleged spirit for these occurrences, but I do find it odd that her name has been attached to these sightings. So far, I haven't found anything to support this theory, other than speculation. So while we were doing research and looking for past evidence from the cemetery to support a possible haunting, I must say, there really isn't much evidence out there on the internet, and what has been shared by visitors hasn't really been that convincing. A couple of ghost box sessions, lens flare photos, and a few photo orbs add nothing to the discussion of a possible haunting. If anything, it sort of feels like the opposite. There is a fairly popular photo that Landoll's has on her website that appears to show a foggy possible apparition near the cemetery in the driveway. However, the first thing I noticed about the photo is that it was or had been raining when the photo was taken. To me, it looks like there was condensation or a raindrop on the lens of the device that took the photo, which in turn caused a pareidolia effect. So yeah, I'm highly skeptical of some of their top evidence. Personally, in the past, I've never been big on investigating graveyards in general. I just don't understand why a possible entity would want to stalk a cemetery in the afterlife. Out of all the places it could go or be, why a graveyard? Sure, there's a spook factor for the living investigators. After all, the thought of death in its own right's disturbing to most individuals. But why would a ghost want to still be there? Especially when you have a decked-out luxury hotel next door. I don't know. I'm trying to be open-minded these days, but I'm still having a hard time understanding some of the traditional paranormal logic of specters and ghouls. Mike and I spent a considerable amount of time running audio and video in Hyde Cemetery, but the cemetery's inhabitants didn't appear to be very active on this night. However, we would wait to reserve our thoughts and judgment until we could review our possible evidence. As the temperature continued to drop outside, we decided to head back to the heated Macbeth cottage for the remainder of the night. The first thing we wanted to do was try to find some logical explanations for what some visitors have been reporting in the cottage. Right off the bat, we started hearing an odd knocking type sound coming out of the dining room closet. We weren't sure at the time if an animal had got into the walls of the cottage or if there was some sort of logical explanation. After listening to it for a few minutes, we decided to open up the closet to see what was making the noises in question. The mechanical knocking type noises appear to be coming from a security alarm setup the castle had set up in the closet. So okay, that possibly rules out the light knocking and tapping type noises people were reporting. There was also a motion-censored security light on the outside of the cottage, and it would also randomly turn itself on and off during the course of the investigation. In turn, it would cause clicking noises. It obviously appeared to be more of a mechanical error instead of something ghostly. The next thing we noticed was that every wall had highly reflective windows, so anytime we would pass a security camera or walk by a window, it felt like we were seeing something in the corner of our eyes. You couldn't walk anywhere in a cottage without getting some sort of odd reflection, either up close or across the room. So to anyone that is leery or jumpy at the thoughts of ghosts, could very well startle themselves if they're not paying attention, especially when it's dark outside. Honestly, it was kind of an odd setup, and we would constantly see our reflections in the windows of the cottage as well as the DVR system during the investigation. Could some individuals be mistaking the reflections for shadow figures and full-bodied apparitions? Honestly, I'm not sure, but we won't rule out the possibility after seeing the setup in person. The entire cottage has a funhouse type effect, and if you're not paying attention, the reflective surfaces might catch an unknowing person by surprise. There was another claim of activity that we also had some fun with. This will likely end up in the bonus content video for this episode. The claims that involve the televisions turning themselves on and off. Obviously, this is a theatrical effect and it's usually used in scary movies, but my brain immediately went to the thought of universal remotes. Think about this scenario. Someone brings in their girlfriend or romantic partner that's afraid of ghosts, or is wanting to see something happen crazy for date night, in a supposedly haunted location. You grab one of these two remotes and scare the living crap out of them by faking activity with the TV. Mike grabbed one of the remotes and he stated that it didn't appear to be a universal remote. I looked at it and I immediately noticed it was a Roku streaming remote. Roku remotes are universal with one another. So the first thing we did was test both remotes on each TV, and both remotes, sure enough, turned on both TVs. We then started having a contest of bouncing the television remote signals, beaming all through the cottage, and turning the TVs on and off from other rooms. I guess I'd compare this to our version of the old Nothing But Net commercials back in the 90s, just with bouncing beams to turn on televisions. Ask your parents about it, kids. We bounced the remote signal beams off the pictures in the hallway, coffee pots, you name it, just to show how easy it would be to fake alleged activity. Not to mention you could just pocket one of the remotes and keep it on your person to mess with somebody. We personally don't buy the TVs turning themselves on and off. I think it's a highly plausible explanation for this claim of alleged paranormal activity. People come to these locations to relax and have fun, and in some cases, mess with the people they're with. As far as the reports of drawers opening by themselves, we did notice the floors were not exactly level, so that might be a reasonable explanation for some of that activity. However, without actually seeing this happen in person, it's hard to tell. We can't rule out the possibility, however. Mike and I hit the cottage hard for several hours. However, the cottage just didn't seem to be active on this particular night. Finally, at around 4:30 in the morning, I got tired of seeing the unused hot tub outside of the cottage and jumped into it at sub-zero temperatures. It was awesome, especially considering the lack of luxury items typically on our investigations. Most of the locations we typically investigate look like a bomb exploded inside of them. So this was a welcome change. We would eventually wrap up the investigation around 6 a.m. and called it a night. At that point, we had plenty of audio and video to review, and it would be interesting to look through the files to see if we captured anything of interest or any signs of possible paranormal activity during the night. While we did find reasonable explanations for some of the claims of activity, there were still a few that we weren't able to disprove at this time. I'll conclude our story from Landoll's Mohican Castle after this short break.
Hey, you. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? I can tell you firsthand that starting a podcast has been a fun and rewarding experience. However, the process can feel overwhelming if you don't know how to get started. That is where Buzzsprout comes in. In fact, it's so good that they've already helped over 100,000 people start their own podcast. Buzzsprout will help you get your podcast onto every major podcasting platform, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You also get a professional website and audio players to share on other websites, detailed analytics, and other tools to help you promote your episodes. Buzzsprout also publishes tutorials, blog posts, and YouTube videos every week to help you get started. To launch your own podcast and to collect your $20 Amazon gift card for signing up, click the link in our show notes on this media player's information panel. This will help support our show, and it will also help Buzzsprout know that we sent you. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast. This episode was also brought to you by our good friend Spencer Shepard at B&B Concrete in Shelby, Ohio. He has some amazing stone pieces for your lawn and garden, such as Sasquatches, gargoyles, bird bass, and even dragons. Be the coolest person on your block and visit facebook.com/BNBConcreteMan or email bnbconcreteman@gmail.com for more information. Do you like hot sauce? Perhaps it's time to dance with the Reaper. Visit our friends at Spice for Lives Foods on Facebook today. They've recently launched their first hot sauce line called Dance with the Reaper, and they will be debuting their signature taco sauce and Caribbean Rio habanero sauce in the near future. I also hear they're in the process of working on something rather ghostly. Once again, that is Spice for Lives Foods on Facebook. Stop in and visit them today. Welcome back. After several days of reviewing the footage and audio for this investigation, unfortunately I must report that we didn't have any activity for the night in question. In fact, it was extremely quiet. Perhaps the mere sight of a castle has visitors stirring up thoughts of ghostly legends and tragic events. Or perhaps there's something more to the paranormal claims and we just caught the location on an off night. It's honestly hard to say, but we did enjoy our stay for the investigation. I do, however, have a lot of unanswered questions about this property. How did the owners know about the supposed Indian attack on the property? Is there any sort of documentation to support this story? Why was Samantha Carnegie singled out as the girl that is allegedly seen in the cemetery? Has someone cut her name in EVPs? Or did someone just see the dates of the tombstones and just state that it has to be her? Also, Landoll's own website indicates that visitors have claimed to see the spirit of the original owner in the cottage. Who is he? And why is he possibly there? And how many deaths actually occurred in the cottage itself over the years? I think all of these questions are important, and it's going to take a lot more time and research to get some of these answers. Considering there is a historic graveyard on the premises, obviously people died in this area. And I think that fact alone can provide an explanation for the possible haunting. However, I really would like to see some of the stories patched up and fact-checked for more information. Right now it seems like we're looking at pieces of a puzzle as opposed to a complete picture of what actually transpired on the land throughout its history. With all of that being said, I obviously love this property, and I have visited it several times over the years. Perhaps we'll come back at some point for a follow-up investigation. Before we wrap this episode up, we did receive a few questions this month on social media, so I'm going to do my best to answer a few of them at this time. The first question we received was from Jennifer in Cebus, Ohio, wherever that is. She states, "Hello, John. I've recently started listening to the show, and I really like some of your perspectives about the paranormal field." I like how she said some. What made you choose Landoll's Mohican Castle for your team's first investigation back? Well, honestly, it was during winter, and it was close to home. We wanted a location that was familiar, but one that had not necessarily been investigated to death. The castle does get some coverage for its claims of activity, but it's also not a location that everybody's attempted to investigate. We also had a hot tub for this investigation, but I previously mentioned that. Thank you for your question. Our second message came from our cbusparanormal.com contact forum. From Possessed Zach Baggins. Sounds legit. However, he didn't state his location. The question. Really? Satanic pigeons? Bro? Dude? Bro? And about 40 explanation points and question marks.
Oh. Yeah, bro. They're the worst kind. I'm not gonna lie, I really did enjoy making the satanic pigeon memes for everybody last month. I'm honestly glad somebody got a kick out of it. Stay cool, bro. Alright, I'll answer one more for this episode. This message also came from our cbusparanormal.com contact form from Lynn. She states, "Hello, I recently purchased your book Ghostly Encounters, Confessions of a Paranormal Investigator, and I've really enjoyed it. Do you have any plans to do an episode on it in the future?" Well, first off, thank you for the purchase and the kind words. I honestly have kicked it around as a possible topic for Season 2 of the Paracast. I do think there are some interesting stories that could come out with that episode. If we do cover it, I do think it'd only be fitting to have Jeff Cole in the episode with me, to get both of our perspectives on it. So never say never, but I might need to talk the old man into it. We'll see how that goes. Thank you once again, everybody, for your comments and questions. Please remember that you can ask us messages on social media, or you can send us messages directly through our contact form on cbusparanormal.com, and we may feature it on a future episode. Well, that concludes our coverage of Landoll's Mohican Castle. While we didn't experience anything paranormal during our investigation, it doesn't necessarily mean that the location isn't active. Throughout the years, I've seen several locations be extremely active on some nights, and then be completely silent on others. I've always stated that each location seems to have its own personality, and it's going to do what it wants to do at any given time. I do think that there are several logical explanations for what some individuals are experiencing on the castle grounds. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that there are logical explanations for everything at the castle. If you're interested in visiting Landoll's Mohican Castle, either for ghost or just a relaxing getaway, visit their official website at landollsmohicancastle.com. As for the Paracast, we're going to be getting a little weird next month, as we take a look at Charles Mills Lake. The location has 2 reported cryptids on site, and it was also witness to one of the most credible UFO sightings in the history of the United States. While CBus Paranormal has been known for our research in ghosts over the years, we will be branching out to other aspects of the paranormal in future cases. As always, please remember to subscribe to the Paracast and our pages on social media, or visit cbusparanormal.com for the latest updates and information. Once again, thank you for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next month.